I can't control my emotions, I exclaimed as steam billowed from my ears. Across the bar, my friend Shelley flashed a simple grin, casually wiping down glasses and tending to the bar with the skill of a seasoned bartender. This was Shelley's bar, named after her late husband, a clever nod to his legacy of helping patrons claim they frequented Jim's. It was a cozy spot, a joint Shelley and Jim had fought tooth and nail to keep afloat. Jim's relentless toil eventually led him to an early grave, leaving Shelley to use his life insurance to settle debts and honor his memory by keeping the bar alive. "All right, Barb," Shelley chimed, topping off my wine glass. "Let me get this straight. You're not upset that Dean, your husband, cheated? It's about who he cheated with?" I took a sip, contemplating her question. "Blaming me, Shelley? Have you seen her?" The woman in question, Marge, was a sight, overweight, chain-smoking, and vocally brash. She held down a middle management job in some bureaucratic abyss, churning out documents for yet another pointless government agency. Shelley set a few more glasses on the bar counter. "Barb, you realize that Marge and Dean's fling happened before you even met Dean, right?" Glancing around the nearly empty bar, save for a couple of guys shooting pool in the back, I shook my head. "Who cares, Shelley? I'm dead serious. Look at me." Rising from the bar stool, I spun around, showcasing my yoga-toned physique before settling back down. "And compare this body to, well, hers," I grimaced, conjuring an image of Marge in my mind. "It's just not right." Shelley draped the towel over her shoulder. "Your husband Dean made a commitment by marrying you. I don't get why this is bothering you. What if he wasn't the one who ended it?" Learning that Marge and Dean had been an item for over a year, I grimaced. "What if Marge dumped Dean? That means I signed up for a guy who wasn't even good enough for Marge." "It's sickening, Barb. Again, what a contrast. What one person discards, another cherishes. Marge's loss is your gain." "Easy for you to talk, Shelley. You're not the one having to sleep with a guy who's been messing around with Marge for over a year." Shelley leaned casually against the counter, a smirk playing on her lips. "Maybe Marge had some bedroom skills that kept Dean interested. Perhaps you two should swap recipes." I nearly choked on my wine. "Just so you know, anyone who's been in my kitchen leaves completely satisfied and always craving more." Shelley arched an eyebrow in response. Glancing around discreetly, I continued, "I may not be a saint, but I'm far from being some sleazy streetwalker." Shelley chuckled, giving my shoulder a comforting pat. "Physical engaging is only scandalous when done right." I could feel my face flushing as I replied, "Shelley, please, this is serious. I'm not okay with this." Shelley shook her head. "Physical engaging takes the least time but causes the most problems." Ignoring her remark, I traced my finger along the rim of my glass. "It's just hard to envision a future with Dean when his past with that Marge woman keeps haunting him." Shelley shook her head, fixing her gaze on me. "Barb, have you ever heard the saying, 'The past is behind you, learn from it. The future is ahead, prepare for it'?" Then a somber expression clouded her face. "Don't you adore Tom the cat? I adore that massive black feline. He's the largest cat I've ever laid eyes on, like a pint-sized panther." "Great," I retorted. "Dean and Tom have always been a pair. Maybe Tom can show Dean how to land a proper job. In the 5 years we've been married, Dean hasn't held down steady employment. He's never put his business education to use." Shelley regarded me with a puzzled expression. "You can't be serious. People from abroad ship their antique wooden pieces here for restoration." "Yeah, I get it, but it's uncomfortable at our office gatherings when Dean mentions he's into woodworking. I dislike the idea that he comes off as some rustic lumberjack. He could have climbed halfway up the corporate ladder by now if he wanted. Instead, Dean prefers tinkering in the garage." "Barb, I've seen Dean's garage. It's more like a professional workshop, better equipped than many woodworking shops." "That's my garage," I snapped. "Part of my grandfather's home, which he left me after my parents passed away." "But didn't Dean completely renovate all the wooden floors in the house?" "Yes, but... and all the moldings and doorways, too." "Yes, but what about the front porch steps and trim?" "Sure, but let's not forget about the fireplace," Shelley remarked, reaching under the counter and producing a magazine. She slid a glossy 2-page spread in front of me. "Barb, isn't that you? On the elegant staircase Dean crafted from scratch, featured in National Home magazine." All right, Shelley, but I was the one dealing with all that dust, and now your house is on the county's historic register. If Dean had taken any of those job offers he had after school, we could have made a decent amount of money and hired someone else to do that kind of work. You don't know what it's like to rely solely on one income, mine. It's not a situation that leaves me thrilled." Shelley rolled her eyes. "I believe it was Groucho Marx who once said, What good is happiness if it can't be bought with money? I took another sip of my wine. Seriously, Shelley, Dean getting turned down by Marge and his meager income aren't exactly the keys to my happiness. What's the key? Do you really think having enough money unlocks happiness? Shelley shook her head. Seriously, Barb, my goodness, were you and your siblings blessed with intelligence? Do you understand how antique restoration generates income? Are you making payments on that new Lexus you got last year? Well, no, I stuttered. Dean paid for the car in full right after I picked it out. Shelley set the magazine aside. Having a lot of money doesn't make you special. More often than not, it just means you're fortunate. Swirling the wine in my glass, I couldn't help but remark, "It's easy for you to say. The last time I saw Dean in a suit was at my mom's funeral. The guy practically lives in faded jeans." Shelley stretched, placing the glasses on the top shelf. "It was folks in jeans who built this country. It's the fools in suits who are tearing it down." Just then, Dean slid into the seat next to me. "So, what are my two lovely ladies discussing?" Shelley turned to Dean. "Tell me, son, how much did your little lumber business bring in last year?" A look of surprise flashed across Dean's face. "You mean the income statement?" He chuckled. "A gentleman never discusses money or his women." Shelley shifted her attention from me to Dean. "We were just discussing your wife's new Lexus. What about you? Have you replaced your old pickup truck yet?" Dean glanced at Shelley, surprised. "Why, it might be 15 years old, but aside from some rust, it runs perfectly fine." Trying to divert the conversation, I interjected, "Speaking of people you know, Marge is now leading the homeowners association next door." "That's nice," Dean replied, absent-mindedly picking up the menu. "Shelley, is my order ready?" Just then, one of the pool players signaled for another beer, holding up an empty bottle and gesturing 5 fingers. Shelley stepped away to attend to the order, leaving Dean and me alone. "Dean, did you catch what I mentioned?" Dean turned the page of the menu. "Of course, Barb. You mentioned that Marge is now heading the homeowners association. It shouldn't bother us. The house is in great shape. You're not concerned." Dean set the menu aside and glanced at me with a puzzled expression. "Huh? I don't care if the house is in great shape." "You idiot," I exclaimed, pushing the menu away. "I'm talking about Marge." Dean looked genuinely embarrassed. "So what about Marge?" "God, you men can be so dense," I sighed. "You and her." "Me and her what?" Dean inquired. "You two have met before?" I used my fingers to gesture quotation marks around the word met. Dean shook his head. "Yeah, Marge and I dated before I met you. So what? Before me, you were dating the quarterback, Mr. All-American High School. That reminds me. Could you call him tomorrow and check on our car insurance? I want to extend the coverage on your Lexus." "There's a difference, Dean. The Mr. All-American High School, as you called him, now sells us insurance, is married, has 2 children, and a picket fence that you helped him install," I explained. A smile spread across Dean's face. "Ah, I see. You want 2 children. That's great, Barb. You know I've been eager for us to start a family. Don't worry about your job. I've got orders lined up for the next 2 years. You can always return to work after, Barb." Dean's voice trailed off as I stormed off my bar stool and out of the bar. The house felt chilly over the next few days. Perplexed, Dean gave me space, burying himself in his workshop with yet another of his projects. Shelley said I was overreacting, even suggesting that too many women seek the right person instead of striving to be the right one. But I couldn't shake my feelings. I mean, who wants someone else's leftovers? That's why I found myself at Marge's house, hoping to uncover the truth. "Sure you don't want a beer?" Marge asked, settling into a chair in her pantsuit, cigarette in one hand and a store-brand beer in the other. No thanks, Marge," I replied, perching on the edge of her couch, careful not to touch anything. Surveying Marge's home, I couldn't believe she had any say in matters of taste. Her decor resembled a 60s trailer park, with lion and leopard prints adorning every surface. "Suit yourself," Marge shrugged, popping open the beer she held in her hand. Her little dog leaped into her lap and she affectionately petted it, making kissing noises. "Let me tell you, Barb, if there aren't any dogs in heaven, then when I kick the bucket, I want to head wherever they are." Marge continued conversing with the dog before turning to me. "Lots of folks talk to animals, but not many bother to listen to them. That's the issue." I struggled to keep my stomach settled, the smoke stinging my eyes. "Marge, I'm surprised you're still smoking. You know you work for the government with all its anti-tobacco regulations." Marge exhaled a plume of smoke. "It's been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that smoking tops the charts in terms of statistics." Attempting to join in with a light chuckle, I shifted the conversation to general homeowner inquiries, aiming to uncover the real motive behind my visit. However, Marge struck me to the punch later in our discussion. "Does Dean still have that big old black cat, Tom?" I winced before replying. "Yes, Marge. Tom the cat still belongs to Dean." Marge took a sip of her beer. "Darn it, that cat never belonged to anyone. Tom came and went as he pleased." She took another sip from the can. "Dean mentioned we used to bump into each other back when that other guy was president. I don't think you were around then." "Yeah, Dean mentioned you two used to be an item," Marge exclaimed, slapping her thigh. "Have you guys crossed paths? Damn, we were like rabbits in bed for over a year. I couldn't get enough of him." I tried not to reveal my surprise. "So, you and Dean have split up? What happened?" Marge shrugged before taking another sip. "He just wasn't my type. Sure, he's a nice guy. Handsome, a bit on the skinny side for my taste, but funny, great in bed and all that. Dean's just not my cup of tea." I attempted to keep my composure, though internally I was seething. "Got it. Not your type." I composed myself before asking in a non-confrontational tone, "Is it true? Did Dean do something to cause the breakup?" Marge shrugged once more before replying, "No, nothing like that. I'm sure he's a great match for someone like you, but Dean wasn't the man I was looking for." I laughed nervously, though inside I wanted to explode. "Wow, Marge, sounds like you're searching for Superman." Grinning as she sipped her beer, Marge chuckled. "Well, it's nice to have a superhero around, if you catch my drift." She crushed the beer can before tossing it into the nearby trash. "As much as I'd love to keep swapping stories about our exes, I've got to get back to business now. Barb, any homeowner questions for me?" I swallowed back the bitterness, wondering if Marge could sense the steam rising from my ears as I retrieved the folder from my purse. Meeting Marge only worsened my already foul mood. Dean pondered, realizing I didn't want to talk. He gave me space, diving into his workshop and volunteering as a youth soccer coach. With Dean away on a 2-day trip, I found myself at Jim's bar, seated beside Shelley as she polished glasses. The bar was moderately busy for a weeknight, with a particularly boisterous group of suits at one table. "Where's your acrobat?" Shelley inquired, pouring me a glass of white wine. I took a sip before responding. "Dean took his truck to fetch some old wooden relic that some wealthy fool wants to restore. If they have so much money, why not buy new things? What's the appeal of paying 10 times more for some old junk when you could have something good and new?" Shelley shook her head. "Are you talking about Dean or his latest project?" "Both, neither, I don't know. It's all just so disheartening," I lamented. Shelley tossed her towel over her shoulder. "Care for some cheese with that wine?" She rolled her eyes. "Life isn't solely about your destination. It's about the journey and the experiences. Dean's a great guy, so quit complaining." I stared at my glass. "Shelley, I've got problems." Shelley reached across the counter, giving me a mock peck on the cheek. "Quit whining. You're fixating on first-world issues, like misplacing your TV remote, your Starbucks coffee being too cold, or an email attachment taking too long to load. Problems that impoverished people elsewhere would love to have instead of, say, struggling to access clean water or medicine for their sick child in a distant, unaffordable hospital." I recoiled. "Just because my issues aren't as grave as others doesn't mean I'm problem-free." "Yes, that's true," Shelley replied, her voice tinged with frustration. "You hit the jackpot, Barb. Good job. Great health, loving husband. Need I say more? I'd give up everything I own just to spend 20 minutes with my late husband. You were born with a silver spoon. Stop thinking you're unhappy." Shelley's outburst stunned me, but she continued. "Listen, Barb, you can't be the bride at every wedding, the corpse at every funeral, and the baby at every baptism." Feeling insulted, I was about to retort when the bar doors swung open and a group of sweaty men in baseball uniforms flooded in. Shelley's mood instantly lifted. "It's going to be a lively night. It's the Gay Men's Softball League." I grimaced. "You let guys like that in here?" She gave me a pointed look. "Seriously, Barb, if by guys like that, you mean men with disposable income who spend generously on drinks and cause no trouble, then yes, not only do I welcome these guys, I actively seek them out and welcome them. This is a bar, after all." Before I could respond, a towering black man approached the counter. He was the largest person I'd ever seen, standing over 6 feet 10 inches tall and weighing around 250 pounds. The buttons on his broad chest strained against his uniform, emblazoned with the team name Master Batters. Shelley must have been acquainted with this towering man, as she didn't protest when he reached over the counter and effortlessly lifted her up, much like a child lifting a Barbie doll. "Set me down, Leroy," Shelley squealed as the giant gently placed her back on the ground. No problem, Shelley, Leroy responded in his deep baritone. Thought you might want to meet the MVP of the Northeast League Southern Division Western Champions. Shelley shyly batted her eyelashes. Does your husband know you're flirting with the opposing team? Leroy burst into laughter. I wasn't always gay, just got sucked into it. It seemed to be an old joke, as Shelley merely rolled her eyes. Sorry, Leroy. You know I don't mess with any man under 9 inches. Leroy pondered for a moment. Damn, Shelley, I'm not chopping off 3 inches. I was taken aback by their banter, but Shelley seemed unfazed, even when Leroy ordered, That'll do, sweetheart. Bring 6 jugs of your finest draft ale for my fellow Batman warriors. He paused. And some Pepsi, too. Shelley began arranging the jugs on the counter. Who's the teetotaler and why's he in my bar? Leroy looked puzzled. That'd be me, starting a 3-day shift at the fire station tonight. Shelley turned to me, filling the jugs with beer. Barb, my only waitress is out sick, and I'm short-handed tonight. She gestured to a group of suited men at a corner table. Can you handle them? We've helped each other out in the past. Shelley and I used to waitress together during school, so it's no big deal, I assured her. A rowdy group congregated at the table adorned with costumes. Ties were loosened and jackets draped over chairbacks. A burly man, reminiscent of a former athlete, appeared to be the ringleader. Hey guys, I greeted them with a smile. What can I get for you? I endured the usual barrage of comments about my phone number or physical attributes, a routine every waitress dealing with intoxicated men has faced since taverns started serving drinks. Over time, I'd become immune to such remarks from fraternity types, mentally filtering them out to the point where they barely registered. One of the men in suits stood up, towering over 6 feet tall. Must have been my lucky day, he quipped, gesturing to the table. Sorry about the commotion. My buddies are celebrating my recent promotion. He handed me a business card, confirming my suspicions. Below the name, in bold gold font, read the title, Senior Vice President, Interdepartmental Technology, Southern Hemisphere. Impressive, I remarked, attempting to return the card. He waved it off. Keep it. I'm feeling generous. So, let's have another round, but only if you join us for a drink. I hesitated, but the table erupted into chants of drink, have a drink, escalating until I relented just to appease them. Meanwhile, Shelley was busy filling beer jugs while I tended to the drinks for my table. She noticed the business card I'd left on the bar. Whose is this? Shelley inquired, nodding toward the shiny new card. I gestured toward the corner table. The gentleman at that table, the tall one. Looks like he's the new bigwig, and it seems he's got some cash to spare. Shelley wiped the foam off the card's edge. Remember what Grandma used to say about money not buying happiness? I rolled my eyes. They say money can't buy happiness, but I'd sure love to cry in my new Ferrari. Chuckling, Shelley examined the card and burst into laughter. What's so funny? I inquired. She shook her head, reading aloud. Vice President of Interdepartmental Technology for the Southern Hemisphere. Don't you see? Look at the initials. Shh, IT head. Your CEO's a idiot. Snatching the card, I scrutinized it again. After a moment, I shrugged. So what if it's not the classiest title? He still seems like a big shot. Shelley remained unimpressed. Big shots are just small fry to other big shots. Mind your manners. I chuckled it off, but Shelley placed her hand on my shoulder. Don't play the fool, and don't do anything stupid to retaliate against an idiot. Shaking off her grip, I retorted, I won't. It's just a little jab back at Dean from Marge. I'll just have a few drinks with them to keep things in check. Free drinks are free drinks. You know the saying, all the best things in life are free. Shelley wasn't ready to let it go. The best things in life may be free, but they come at a hefty cost. In my defense, I was so intoxicated that I hardly remember what transpired next. I can't recall leaving the bar, reaching my house, or climbing the stairs to my bedroom. There are faint recollections of being carnal with the idiot in my bed, followed by a feeble climax. I think I momentarily sobered up during the second or third round when he accidentally caused me pain. No! I yelled, evading him and nearly tumbling off the bed, barely discernible in the darkness. He nudged me with his paw. You're not leaving me hanging, are you? I've still got one more round in the chamber. My head throbbed now as the inevitable hangover kicked in, and I started feeling remorseful about my actions. Placing my hand on his chest, I said, Listen, I think it's best if you go. I can't have you staying the night. How about whipping up some breakfast? I really didn't need that right now. My headache was worsening. Real funny. But seriously, I need you to leave. I gestured toward the bathroom door as he got out of bed. As he made his way to the bathroom, I glanced at the clock on the dresser. Its red LEDs displaying 3:18 a.m., the sound of running water ceased, and the strip of light under the bathroom door vanished. Amidst a creeping hangover and burgeoning guilt, reality began to sink in. Just as the bathroom door swung open, revealing the undressed silhouette of the idiot, the bedroom door creaked open simultaneously, revealing the outline of a figure holding something in their hands as they stealthily crossed the threshold. I shrieked, causing the intruder to halt in his tracks. Creep burst out of the bathroom doorway, snatched a table lamp from the dresser, and struck the intruder on the back of the head. The unexpected blow sent the uninvited guest crashing to the floor. My screams ceased as I switched on the bedside lamp. Hastily dialing emergency on my desk phone, I pleaded, "Send the police! There's a burglar in my house!" as the emergency operator began her scripted response. I glanced at Creep, who was using a lamp cord to bind the intruder's hands behind his back, and a chill ran down my spine. Roses, dropped by the intruder, littered the floor. Beside his hands lay a pair of work boots, presumably carried when he was struck. They were Dean's worn-out work boots. Creep finished securing the knots, muttering, "You damn burglar, think you can sneak up on me?" As Blockhead grabbed the intruder by the hair, lifting his head from the floor, my blood turned to ice as Dean's bloodied face came into view. A soft groan escaped his lips. I leaped off the bed, approaching my husband. "Get away from him, it's my husband." Blockhead wore a puzzled expression as he released Dean's hair, causing his face to thud against the floor. "Your husband? What the hell?" He didn't finish his sentence as a low growl emanated from the darkness beyond the bedroom door. For a moment, two yellow eyes glared at us before a swift black blur emerged from the darkness, latching onto Creep's face. Blockhead's screams mingled with a fierce growl as Tom the cat sank his claws and teeth into his head. They spun around as Blockhead leaped up, attempting to pry Tom off, colliding with the window. Eventually, he managed to wrench the big black cat away from his scratched and bleeding face. Dodging a furious kick, Tom darted under the bed to safety. Grasping his injured face and swearing, Blockhead cursed as I dropped to my knees, reaching for Dean's head. Suddenly, excruciating pain shot through my left bum part, as if dozens of knives had pierced me. Letting out a scream, I frantically tried to rid myself of the source of agony. Tom refused to release his grip, causing me to whirl around in pain, screaming the entire time. After what felt like an eternity, I stumbled upon Blockhead still nursing his bleeding face and cursing at the cat. Finally freeing myself from Tom's grasp, he retreated back under the bed, paying no heed to the blood running down my leg. I hopped around, attempting to return to Dean, but inadvertently stepped on Creep's foot. "You stupid idiot!" he roared, withdrawing his hand from his face to deliver a powerful blow to my head, sending me crashing onto the bed. "I'm going to strike you up," he bellowed. Still reeling from the ringing in my ears, I watched as Creep, his hand poised, advanced from the window toward me while I lay disoriented on the bed. However, before he could take another step, I witnessed Dean spring to his feet, his hand still bound behind his back. With a sudden burst of energy, Dean lunged forward, executing a gravity-defying somersault without using his arms. At the pinnacle of his mid-air spin, Dean seemed to rotate around both legs, striking Creep in the chest and forcefully slamming him back into the wall, where he became ensnared in the window curtains. As soon as Dean fell on the ground, he sprang to his feet and dashed toward Creep, who was still ensnared in the curtains. With a powerful shoulder thrust, Dean propelled him backward into the wall, then turned to shout at me, "Run, Barb, run! Get out of here! Call for help! I'll handle this attacker!" I stood frozen in place, gazing at Dean's bloodied face, his hair drenched in blood, as he struggled to restrain Creep with his smaller frame. The curtains tore from the wall as Creep raised his massive forearm and struck Dean's face with a sickening crack. Dean crumpled to the ground. The assailant kicked Dean, who groaned and rolled away from the blow. Advancing toward Dean, Creep raised his foot high to stomp on him as he lay motionless on the floor. However, just as Block's leg began its descent, a black blur darted out from under the bed, and with a piercing growl, Tom the cat seized the assailant's groin. Blockhead's shriek reached such a high pitch that it resembled a woman's cry. The screams persisted as Blockhead leaned over, pounding Tom the cat in an attempt to dislodge the angry feline from his groin. Suddenly, Dean shook his head and surged up from the floor, thrusting his shoulder into the bent assailant's stomach. With a roar, Dean hoisted Blockhead onto his back in a fireman's carry, his legs flailing. At full speed, Dean propelled the three of them toward the large picture window of the bedroom. The cacophony of Dean's roar, Blockhead's screams, and Tom's furious hissing was drowned out by the shattering of glass. I remained frozen on the bed, horror-stricken, as the trio vanished from view, plummeting outside the window into the dark night. Their sounds were abruptly muffled, then ceased altogether. For a moment, the room fell into silence, broken only by the flap of a curtain in the wind from the shattered window. Then came the soft patter of broken glass fragments falling. Suddenly, a piercing, heart-wrenching scream filled the room. It took my brain a few moments to register that I was the one screaming at the top of my lungs. My mind felt shrouded in a fog, but gradually the haze lifted, as if I were resurfacing from underwater. Opening my eyes, I found myself face to face with an Asian woman in a blue hospital gown, gently dabbing my face with a cool towel. Our eyes met, and she set down the towel before hurrying off, murmuring, "I'll go fetch the doctor." As I turned my head, I spotted Shelley seated in a chair beside my bed. Yet my attempt to sit up was thwarted by the restraints securing my wrists and legs to the bed. "Damn it," I yelled at Shelley. "Get that nurse, Chinese, Vietnamese, whatever, and release me." Coming closer, Shelley tried to calm me down. "Take it easy, Barb. You were unconscious all day. They had to restrain you because you were being combative. The nurse, whom I believe is Vietnamese, went to fetch the doctor." Still struggling, I insisted. "Chinese, Vietnamese, it doesn't matter. Just set me free now. I need to see Dean." "Calm down, Barb. You're fortunate I'm here. Leroy, the African-American fellow from the Gay Softball League, was among the first responders on the night of your incident. He remembered you were my friend and let me know you were here and what had happened," Shelley said, her eyes misty as she recounted the events. My body sagged with shame at the memory of that night, knowing Shelley was aware of what transpired. She continued, "They had to administer a sedative to you. The whole situation was unpleasant. But don't worry, Leroy got some of his firefighter buddies to use ladders to fix the broken window on the top floor of your house. Although I've been discharged, I had to sign numerous documents stating that I was acting against medical advice. I'll need to schedule a follow-up appointment to formally discharge from the hospital. Blah, blah, blah. I would have signed a confession to the Kennedy assassination if it meant I could see Dean. However, when I glimpsed Dean through the NICU window, it was a shock. He was swathed in bandages, surrounded by tubes, bags, and machines. I was rendered speechless as I struggled to comprehend the medical jargon the doctor used to describe Dean's condition. I interrupted the doctor's detailed medical explanation. "Will Dean pull through?" The doctor paused, and I gripped Shelley's hand tightly. After a moment, he responded, "I believe he'll survive, but it'll be a challenging journey ahead. He'll need multiple rounds of reconstructive surgery and an extended recovery period. Unfortunately, some of the most effective treatments aren't covered by insurance. The procedures necessary for his optimal recovery will be quite costly." In that moment, I realized my deep love for Dean had always been there, just waiting for a tragedy to reveal it. Determined to demonstrate my love, I took action immediately. I emptied my retirement savings to finance his treatment. Early withdrawal penalties and tax consequences were insignificant compared to the need. I secured a substantial loan against my home, increased my credit card limits, and even traded in my Lexus for cash and an old van, believing it would facilitate Dean's transportation after treatment. The longing for Dean was profound. They say you only miss the sun when it starts to snow and the light when the candle burns out. As the weeks passed, life felt like living in a perpetual hell. Dean's mental recovery lagged behind his physical healing. The neurosurgeon informed me that his memory would gradually return in fragments, but the timeline and extent were uncertain. I dreaded the possibility that he might recall the events of that fateful night. I dedicated hours to Dean, reminiscing over old photos, sharing anecdotes, and tirelessly searching for Tom the cat, who vanished that dreadful night. Despite distributing flyers, placing ads, and visiting shelters, the elusive feline remained elusive. Months passed uneventfully until the sight of 2 law enforcement officers exiting the rehabilitation facility sent a chill down my spine. Until then, I had successfully thwarted persistent detectives, using a fortress of medical directives and legal documents to shield Dean. However, my world crumbled when I encountered resistance at the rehab center's front desk. The once friendly guards now wore stern expressions as they barred my passage to Dean's room. "Ma'am, we must insist you vacate the premises immediately," one guard stated firmly. "And we're advising against your return until further notice," the other added. They ushered me out, pushing me toward the parking lot and my car. The following day, a police cruiser delivered a restraining order, prohibiting any contact with Dean and mandating a distance of over 100 yards. Upon seeing Dean, I barely recognized him. Doubt clouded my mind. Perhaps I had erred in the date or location. Over a year had passed since our last encounter, and my life spiraled downward in every aspect. Despite my persistent attempts to reach out, Dean had rebuffed all communication. Yet determined to make our reunion inevitable, I followed the unfamiliar path to the rear of the grand estate. Passing furniture Dean had once restored, I stepped onto the porch to find a stranger before me, bald, with a vicious scar encircling a portion of his head. His once radiant blue eyes, which always brightened at the sight of me, now resembled hard stones, barely flickering with recognition. With a dark mustache and goatee, Dean resembled Walter White from Breaking Bad more than my husband. The sole identifier was the large black cat nestled in his lap, which Dean stroked. The sight of the bald man with the feline resembled a scene from a cheesy sci-fi film, with an ominous villain poised to destroy the world. Taking a shallow breath, I approached them with outstretched arms, hoping for a fresh start with a hug. However, Tom the cat leaped onto Dean's lap, his back arched, fur standing on end, tail raised, emitting a hissing growl with bared fangs. Dean extended his hand, palm facing me, and uttered harsh words. "Stop it, Barb. There's only one kitty here I'm interested in, and it's not you." I stood frozen. The words delivered in Dean's body lacked the smoothness of his usual voice, instead bearing a hoarse, guttural tone reminiscent of Marlon Brando in The Godfather. Collecting myself, I took a seat across from Dean, separated by a small table cluttered with scattered folders and Tom still growling. "Quiet, Tom," I muttered, meeting Dean's gaze. "Where did you find Tom? I searched everywhere for him." "I haven't seen Tom since." Dean maintained his stern gaze, leaving an uncomfortable silence hanging between us. Finally, he broke it. "Well, Barb, Margie brought Tom to me. She found him injured and rushed him to the veterinary clinic. Seems like Tom had quite the pricey hospital stay, too," I muttered under my breath. "That woman," before forcing a smile. "I mean, that was kind of Marge. We'll have to find a way to repay her." Dean continued to pet Tom. "Yes, Barb? You want to talk, right?" I fought back tears. "Dean, I know I've made mistakes." He cut me off. "Mistakes make good stories, but lousy marriages." I pushed on. "I started to see things differently. I thought I was better than I really was, smarter and more deserving. Now I know better." I awaited Dean's response. Each second dragged on like an eternity before he spoke. "Beware of false knowledge. It's more dangerous than ignorance. Why are you here?" "I'm here, Dean, to apologize sincerely, to show you I understand how you feel." He let out a bitter laugh. "Do you? I'd walk with a limp, have constant headaches, and my balance would never be the same. Find someone twice your size to smash your head with a lamp, break most of your body, and then fall 30 feet. Then maybe we'll talk." "Wait, don't forget to add being stabbed in the back and betrayed by someone you trusted more than life itself. Realizing you never loved me was worse than rehab," Dean added, grinning. "Dean, that's not true," I countered. He chuckled. "The truth sets you free, but not before it breaks you." Unsure of how to respond, I stammered, I don't know what to say." "Dean," I began, but he leaned back as Tom the cat leapt off his lap. "Come on, Barb. Speaking the truth is easy. It's weaving a web of lies that's hard. Or are you using Homer Simpson's logic on me? It takes two to lie, one to lie, and one to listen." My anger started to rise. "I'm not some fool, and I see the light at the end of the tunnel." He smirked. "We all know light travels faster than sound. That's why some people seem bright until they speak. You seem to fit that category just fine." Trying to stay calm, I said, "Did you really have to target Shelley after you filed complaints with the state council? They revoked her liquor license. She lost the bar." Dean intertwined his fingers. "Yes, it seems the Drinks Commission takes its rules seriously. They don't allow bar owners to have non-employees serve drinks. Shelley sent you to that table where you got drunk. I see no reason why Shelley shouldn't face the consequences." "It wasn't her fault, Dean. The bar was busy that night. Shelley was too overwhelmed to monitor my actions." He glared at me. "Shelley wasn't the only one busy that night, were you, Barb?" I was nearly in tears. "Shelley was my oldest friend. Now she won't even speak to me. And she was also your friend." I dried my tears. "Your injury, it changed you, and it's my fault. You've always been such a decent guy, Dean." Why did you feel the need to burn, Shelley? Dean leaned in. Burn, Shelley. Right now I guess I'm just ashes because you know what they say about where nice guys finish. Good guys finish last. Don't mistake kindness for weakness again. He leaned back. So, Barb, if you can't hang with the cool crowd, step off your broomstick. It was a nightmare. You couldn't just take it out on me, could you, Dean? Hasn't there been enough pain and suffering? The DA didn't file charges, calling it a group riot. He gestured to a folder with the state seal. Lies written in ink can't conceal facts written in blood. Blood? Is that what you want, Dean? My blood? We lost Creep's lawsuit because your testimony supported his case. Dean stared. I think that guy who'll never walk again and will live with a colostomy bag deserves better than memories of you. Barb, Dean said, looking at me. Some people are only alive because it's illegal to shoot them. I brushed it off. I'm losing my house. They're garnishing my wages. Our accounts are frozen. We're broke. Dean seemed unsurprised. Yeah, you're broke. It was a statement. He motioned around. I'm just a poor planner trading my work for basic needs. This meeting wasn't going as I hoped. I sighed. I can say sorry a million times, but it seems you're not ready to hear it. Let's just keep talking and deal with things as they come. Dean reached for a document from the pile on the table and tossed it over to me. These are divorce papers. Sometimes you have to cut ties to prevent the crazies from trailing you. Over the next 16 months, my life felt like a never-ending cycle. Job loss due to performance woes consumed me, with drinking becoming my main pastime, leaving little room for work. Going to work felt futile as most of my paycheck went to Blockhead, who spent endless hours fending off creditors until payday. Amidst the chaos, there were glimmers of hope, like job insurance covering treatment for an STD contracted during one of my drunken blackouts. Today marked the lowest point. Outside my former home, I waited for the bank representative to finalize foreclosure, promised $500 for house upkeep, along with whatever remained from selling or pawning belongings from my worn-out minivan, would have to suffice. With 4 nearly bald tires, I set off to my new job, where my elderly aunt ran a tavern near mining towns up north. It wasn't a dream job, but it offered affordable housing amidst the hillbillies in the village. In the depths of my despair, guess who approaches? The woman who triggered this whole debacle, Marge. She strolls with her dog nipping at her ankle, cigarette dangling from her lips. I secretly hoped she'd veer across the street, but no such luck as she strides right up to me. Heading for bail? Marge queries, exhaling smoke. Yeah, Marge, going to help an aunt up north. You know the saying, when one door closes, another opens. Barb, when that door closes, grab a hammer and nails. Seal it shut, Marge advises sternly. I apologize, I reply, observing her dog relieve itself on my minivan tire. Marge takes another drag. You're like some twisted Rapunzel turning gold into straw. You're the only one who's turned Dean, one of the nicest guys around, into a complete idiot. I beg to differ, Marge, I countered. Why does it matter to you? You let him go. How does this concern you? Marge lit another cigarette from the behind of the one she was smoking. You must be the most clueless woman alive. I released Dean because he was too decent to leave me himself. I knew he deserved better. We only connected through a drunken encounter. I'm not as naive as you. I understood Dean was sticking around to spare me from looking like a total floozy. I wasn't inclined to argue with Marge. Look, if I could turn back time and change things, I would. Marge leaned over to stroke her dog. No, you'd probably get injured from time travel, like through sheer idiocy. I gestured to the crucifix hanging from Marge's neck. I thought you were a Christian. What happened to loving your neighbor? Jesus may love you, but that doesn't change the fact that you're promiscuous, she retorted. I waved as Marge and her dog departed. Well, thank goodness this is the last encounter. Marge didn't look back, but I heard her retort. Don't assume you've seen the last of something or someone. With a pounding headache and a craving for a drink, relief washed over me when a BMW finally pulled up, and a well-dressed woman in her 30s hopped out. Her demeanor seemed to declare, I'm in real estate because my husband rakes in cash and I'm bored while the nanny watches the kids. Look at you. You must be Barb. Apologies for my tardiness. It's been a chaotic day. This marks my 3rd citation today with 2 more to follow, she chirped, which grated on my nerves. Oh, the struggles you endure. I suppose you long for the days when bank robberies involved people robbing banks rather than banks seizing homes, I retorted. The bank representative appeared puzzled as she extracted a piece of paper and an envelope from her designer bag. Here's your money, just as we agreed. Hopefully, it brings a smile to your face. Indeed, Trading my great-grandparents' home, a family heirloom for generations, for less than a month's salary, fills me with an urge to dance and sing, I replied, dripping with sarcasm. She attempted to soothe my agitation. Don't worry, the house will be well cared for. A group of affluent gentlemen established a trust and purchased it. They've pledged to maintain its original state. Once their caretaker arrives, we'll provide a tour for your confirmation, and then you'll be on your way. Suddenly, a loud crash signaled the arrival of a large motorcycle pulling up behind the BMW. The rider embodied the stereotypical biker image, adorned with tattoos, clad in a leather vest, gloves, and sunglasses. Instead of a helmet, he sported a Harley-Davidson scarf wrapped around his head. As he dismounted, it became apparent that he was short, yet extraordinarily muscular, resembling a sturdy fire hydrant. My spirits sank as the biker directed his attention to the box on the back of his bike. Emerging from it, the big black cat leaped out and stretched on the sidewalk, confirming the biker's identity as Dean. With a noticeable limp, he approached us, pausing to lift his sunglasses, a cigar held between his lips. Dean strode up to the girl, completely disregarding my presence. Let's settle this. You know who. She waved her hand dramatically, dispersing Dean's cigar smoke. I'd prefer if you refrain from smoking in my presence. Dean paused to take the cigar from his mouth, but didn't extinguish it as he spoke to her. Listen up, I'm not here for your thanks. She appeared bewildered. It seemed she wasn't accustomed to such talk at her exclusive club. Attempting a different approach, she gestured at Dean's cigar. Do you realize how injurious that is to your health? Dean glanced at his cigar. My grandpa lived to be 95 smoking cigars, she quizzed with a mocking grin. Really? Dean retorted, replacing the cigar in his mouth. He lived to be 95 by minding his own business. The girl clung tightly to her designer handbag as Dean edged closer to her. Before uttering a word, he gestured toward the house. You're here for your commission? Then, he motioned toward me. Sure, there's a fleet coming into port somewhere, and this cheating woman needs to service a bunch of sailors, and you can join her for all I care. But first, before you send her packing, take the keys from her. At last, I interjected. Dean, I'd appreciate it if you didn't insult me. Dean's stern gaze shifted to me. Oh, did I hurt your feelings by calling you a stupid woman? My bad, I thought you were already aware. The girl seemed to realize our connection and attempted to diffuse the tension with a forced laugh. Well, you know, everything happens for a reason. Dean maintained his gaze on me as he spoke. Barb, your reason is that you're foolish and make foolish choices. But look at it this way. Jellyfish don't have brains and they've been around for 150 million years, so there's hope. I wished I could disappear. Let's just finish this so I can collect my money and leave. Then you can find happiness. Dean gestured with his cigar toward me. Yes, your presence fills me with delight, so much so that I'd rather restrain myself from clapping my hands in joy. He addressed the bank representative. Hand that envelope to the woman before she starts flagging down cars on the highway and soliciting. I'm willing to bet the only room in the house she damaged was the bedroom from excessive use. His counterpart appeared uneasy, but Dean seized the envelope from her and thrust it into my hand. I noted it was packed with $100 bills. I understand you're not accustomed to getting paid unless you're lying down, but don't fret. You'll be back in that position soon. I fought the urge to throw the money at him, opting for practicality over wounded pride. Turning on my heel, I marched to my worn-out car and drove off, wiping away tears that blurred my view of Dean holding Tom the cat in his arms in front of what used to be my home, reflected in the cracked rearview mirror. It brought to mind another old saying, one from Shelley's grandmother. If you ever want to feel wealthy, count all the things you possess that money can't purchase.